In the last episode, we talked about how Guthrum managed to conquer massive portions of Europe and the epic turnaround that cost King Alfred to overthrow him and reclaim his lands. The Vikings pledged to baptize Guthrum as a Christian after the war. These Danes were pressed up against the wall, and Alfred was confident that they would keep their word, unlike earlier treaties that the Danes had made and later broke. Guthrum was baptized in 879 at the Treaty of Wedmore under the name Athelstan, with Alfred as his godfather. The Danes finally withdrew from Wessex after a few more minor conflicts in which minor Danish warlords disobeyed Guthrum's orders to assault the Wessex boundaries. They then completely retreated to East Anglia, where Guthrum established himself as a king. Mercia was partitioned between Guthrum and Alfred in 886, with the Danes settling in the east and the Anglo-Saxons maintaining control of the country's western region. Alfred and the West Saxons experienced an unprecedented turnabout. In addition to saving his realm, he also found himself in a position of relative strength. Occasionally, tensions would rise, but for the most part, Guthrum would maintain the peace, allowing Alfred the breathing room he needed to strengthen his nation against additional foreign invasions, of which there would be many more in the years to come. In addition to ensuring Alfred's kingdom's survival, the Vikings' unexpected defeat in 878 gave the West Saxons the breathing room they needed to reorganize and get ready for the inevitable next invasion. Wessex continued to be vulnerable to outside assault, even after Guthrum went to East Anglia to govern there as king under the Christian name Athelstan. Another may easily come and do the same, just as Guthrum had successfully carved out a kingdom well over a decade after the vast Heathen army original's arrival. It was now time to adopt a fresh approach. Alfred spent the 1980s transforming the numerous market towns of his kingdom into boroughs that would serve as fortified gathering places for local militias to fight against the unexpected invasion of Vikings. Even while formally Guthrum and Alfred were at peace, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't try his luck again, or at the very least harbor others who would. Alfred also established a long-lasting relationship with Ethelred, the warrior who ruled over the region of Mercia that was still under Anglo-Saxon dominion. The connection was finalized by Alfred's eldest daughter marriage following the passing of King Ceolwulf in or about 879. Early in the 80s, Ethelred ascended to power as the Lord of the Mercians. Alfred, who was reportedly subject to some degree of West Saxon dominance at the time, also appears to have reached a similar agreement with the southern Welsh kingdoms, whose kings were constrained by the expansionist sons of Robert the Great and Gwynedd. The most powerful of these northern Welsh rulers may have sided with the Jorvikian Vikings against Wessex, before eventually submitting to West Saxon rule and securing Alfred's western frontiers. In the end, Guthrum maintained the peace with Wessex until his death in 890. However, only 2 years later, the borough system would encounter its first significant challenge when two large fleets of raiders totaling more than 300 longboats under the command of a sea king named Hastin arrived on the Kentish shore to try their luck against the West Saxons. However, times had changed over the previous decade, and after some early victories, Wessex held out. Hastin's soldiers probably completely fled Britain by 896 or dispersed into East Anglia. The borough system had been successful. When Alfred the Great passed away in 899, he handed his country to his eldest son and successor, Edward. But the succession was not easy. Ethelwald, Alfred's nephew, was another who aspired to be on the throne. After the two cousins were initially engaged, Ethelwald escaped to the north to Northumbrian Danelaw, where he was warmly welcomed by local authorities. However, this may very well have been a ploy to use Ethelwald to eventually take the last Anglo-Saxon kingdom once and for all. Official titles appear to have been relatively meaningless during this early period in the Danelaw history, territory typically owned by the aristocratic governing class rather than a single king. However, Ethelwald spent his time in Northumbria assembling an army. By 901 or 902, he traveled to Essex, where the local Scandinavian aristocracy, who now dominated there, also recognized him as a king. He was able to establish control over the Vikings of East Anglia from this position of strength, particularly their new king Eric, who accompanied him on a deep foray into Mercia. By December 902, Edward had also amassed a force that most likely included West Saxons, Mercians and Kentish soldiers. his forces were able to capture Ethelwald after a bloody combat that took place in the marshy lowlands close to the River Holt. By the end of the day, the Danes had prevailed, but the men of Kent had taken a costly price for their victory, along with the Kentish ruler Sichelm, Ethelwald, and East Anglian monarch Eric were also assassinated. Edward emerged as a true victor. With Ethelwald out of the way, Edward could now concentrate on establishing his dominance at home, something he would do for the next several years. While this was going on, Ethelred and Ethelflaed in western Mercia had also been busily strengthening their border with the Danelaw by constructing boroughs wherever they could. Following Alfred's lead, Alfred had given the Mercians sovereignty of the city of London as part of Ethelred's marriage agreement with Ethelflaed. This was a significant source of wealth. Together, the two kings managed through restoration of Mercian authority, albeit within a smaller geographic territory. Ethelflaed in particular gained enormous popularity amongst her adopted people and appeared to have fully assimilated, but the Mercians would soon find themselves back on the defense. The settlement of a sizable group of exiles in the land just to the north of the Mercian-held town of Chester, an old Roman fortress, its walls still visible today, formidable in Edward's day, had a court at the same time that Edward was engaging combat with his cousin in 902. As a result of a mass exodus of Vikings from Ireland, although it's possible that the Mercians wanted to use the Irish Vikings as a defense against the Danelaw persisting strength. By 907, it appears that the Irish Vikings had joined the Danelaw to besiege Chester. That year, when the Mercian army moved north to face this new threat, it was revealing that the woman Ethelflaed, who had full authority to act on his behalf due to his apparent incapacitance due to illness. Ethelflaed went instead of Ethelred. It is unknown what transpired afterwards, because the West Saxons written Anglo-Saxon chronicle may not have wanted to record a victory won only by the Mercians. Nevertheless, the Vikings were routed at Chester, and afterward Ethelflaed rather than Ethelred was in complete control as the Mercians launched an offensive. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle describes a combined Mercian-West Saxon offensive into Viking territory in 909, with the goal of recovering the treasured Northumbrian monarch Oswald's relics. The strike group used this chance to plunder Lindsey's comparatively inaccessible territories for 5 weeks before retreating before Jorvik could respond. It is still plausible that Edward's oldest son Aethelstan participated in the strip, even if no leader is known to have been there. Despite being Aethelstan's eldest child, he was probably not Edward's successor at the time because he was being raised by his aunt Ethelflaed in Mercia. He probably participated in the most of the significant American offensives from this point on while preparing for a career in the military, but we shall learn much more about him later. The Northumbrians responded by conducting a large raid deep within Mercia in 910. Before setting off on their voyage back to the north, they ransacked the countryside, stockpiling loot. The unified West Saxon Mercian force then caught the Vikings off guard at a location called Waddensfield, close to Tettenhall. I sincerely hope you liked the video. Stay safe and make sure to subscribe to our channel till the next segment, in which we discuss the specifics of the conflict in Northumbria.